Hello and welcome back to the Alaska Seminar Series for 2023. My name is Valerie from Valerie and Valise, the blog that is here to help you plan all of your Alaska travels and travels in the rest of the American West too. I am joined today by someone that I have, I think, known for many years, though we only reconnected professionally a few years ago. This is Meghan from the Alaska Railroad, which is what we're going to be talking about in this video today. And Meghan and I both worked for Holland America, the cruise line, over a decade ago almost at this point. But she's now with the Alaska Railroad, and she has some very exciting news that she's going to be sharing about what's new and what's noteworthy with the Alaska Railroad this year. She's going to start by giving us an overview, just in case you're not totally familiar with the way the railroad system works in Alaska. And then she'll give us the 2023 download, and then we'll do some questions. So if you have any questions at any point during this video, if you're watching live, you can pop them into the chat. If you're watching the replay, you can comment on this video, and I am keeping an eye on comments so that either I will get in and answer your question, or if you have a really good one that I don't know the answer to, I can reach out to Meghan and get her help to get your questions answered. So with that, I will turn it over to Meghan to let her tell us all about the Alaska Railroad and what we need to know in 2023.
Great. Thanks, Valerie. Thanks so much for the invitation to be here today and talk about the Alaska Railroad. 2023 is a big year for us, and I'm excited to share all the details on that. So let's go ahead and get into it. Next slide. So the Alaska Railroad, your ticket to Alaska adventure. As Valerie just mentioned, I'm going to start today with kind of a general overview. I know some people might be more familiar or less so with the Alaska Railroad. We are owned by the state of Alaska, and we really try to make our focus connecting Alaska for visitors and travelers who want to see more of the state. And of course, I'll be talking through all the details of that. But to start with, I've got a short video that'll help you all get a sense of, what you might experience on board. So Valerie, if you don't mind hitting that.
Here we go.
It's the way to see Alaska.
They are blown away. The sights you see, the people you meet, the hospitality that Alaska is known for, it's unmatched.
You know what's so funny? I recognize people in that video.
Oh, really?
Yep, that's how small Alaska is. Once you go, if you make a return trip, you will probably run into somebody you know that from the last time you were there.
That's right. The biggest small town of the state right there. Yep. We've got the teaser right here at the end of that video. If you hit the next slide, that's where we've got.
Oh, no, I don't want to play it again. Nope. Nice try. There we go.
It's a good video,
right.
But once is probably enough.
Yeah, here we go.
But here we go. 2023 is a big year for us because it's our centennial year. We're celebrating 100 years since the completion of our main line. So in 1923, President Warren G. Harding traveled to Alaska for the occasion, all the way up to Nenana, Alaska, and between Denali and Fairbanks. And that's where he drove in the Golden Spike to complete the main line of the Alaska Railroad. And we've been connecting Alaska ever since. We're really proud of that heritage and proud to share that with our guests this summer. So definitely be talking more about that along the way today. But, again, we should start with just a quick overview for those who might not be as familiar. So Valerie, if you hit the next slide. This is a really useful way to start. So this is going to be a close-up of the map of our tracks, that 500-mile main line that we were just talking about. You can see over there on the right-hand side, this inset of Alaska. Alaska is a huge state. It looks like a small area that we're connecting right there, but that's south central and interior Alaska that the Alaska Railroad is providing really great connectivity to. So Anchorage is our hub city. Speaking of Centennial history, Anchorage actually traces its origin, its start as a tent city construction camp for the Alaska Railroad. Today, of course, it's the largest city in Alaska and still serves as our hub of train operations. From Anchorage, we go as far north as Fairbanks up in the interior. And as far south as Seward on the southern coast. And along the way, we stop in lots of very popular destinations that people tend to want to visit on a trip to Alaska. So Denali National Park, of course, is a huge bucket list destination for many people. Talkeetna is a very charming little mountain town, same with Girdwood. Whittier is the gateway to Prince William Sound. Lots of destinations that people, really are worth working into an Alaska visit on your itinerary. And while we do operate year-round, summer is definitely our busiest season. During the summer, we've got trains going all directions every day, so it becomes very easy to take the Alaska Railroad, where you want to go. As I mentioned, also Alaska is very large. I think sometimes people forget that. And it can take a little while to get to where you want to go. Kenai Fjords National Park outside of Seward is well worth visiting, as is Denali. They're hundreds of miles apart. It's going to take a little while to get there no matter how you travel. But, one of the advantages, I think, of traveling with the Alaska Railroad is that you can really make your in-state travel time a trip highlight, as opposed to kind of an "are we there yet" time. So with that said, Valerie, if you don't mind hitting the slide, we can talk a little bit more about the onboard experience. So on board the Alaska Railroad, we're proud to offer two different service class options. So here's an idea of adventure class. This is sort of like our coach option. So big comfortable seats, big picture windows. We encourage people to get up and walk around the train, stretch your legs. Which, I think is appreciated on some of our longer journeys. And then the next slide will give you all an idea of our premium class of service, which we call Gold Star service. Now, these are double-decker rail cars. Up top, your ticketed seat would be under the glass dome there, allowing for panoramic views of the scenery as it's rolling by. There's a dedicated bar attendant up top in the dome looking after you, and 2 adult beverages are included. And we have tour guides up there as well, keeping you, informed, educated, entertained along the way, sharing the stories behind the sights of what the train is passing by. And on the next slide, another feature I really like to highlight about Gold Star service is this outdoor upper level viewing platform. So just behind your ticketed seat under the dome, it's an easy walk to get outside, get some fresh mountain air. And we noticed photographers really appreciate this feature because it allows for getting those photos of beautiful Alaska scenery without a pane of glass in the way. So definitely a highlight of traveling in Gold Star service. The next slide, we'll get a little more into our onboard dining options. So as I mentioned, our Gold Star cars are double-decker. Up top, of course, is the glass dome seating area, but down below is the full-service dining room, and dining is included for our Gold Star guests. The menu changes a little every year. I'm still waiting to hear. I know that they're trying to work up something fun for our Centennial this summer to work in some sort of historic local flavors. But, every year we're looking for ways to incorporate, local ingredients, whether it's reindeer sausage or birch syrup, or we have an onboard sort of oatmeal alternative that's Alaskan grown barley hot cereal. So try to incorporate some unique local flavors in the onboard dining experience. In addition to the Gold Star dining room, on the next slide, we can also give you a sense of our of our bistro car, as we refer to it, the Wilderness Cafe. And that also offers sort of grab and go dining options. So if you wanted a snack in between or didn't feel like sitting down to the full service dining experience, we do have things like sandwiches, wraps, salads, muffins, things like that available in the cafe car, which is well worth exploring on your trip as well. So that's a rough overview of the onboard experience. As I mentioned, summer is definitely our busiest season, and that's primarily what we'll be talking about today. Summer for us in Alaska, mid-May to mid-September. May and September tend to be our shoulder season, and it's not unique to the Alaska Railroad. You typically can get some price breaks traveling in Alaska during that time, and we really build to a peak in July of being our busiest time to visit. But there's advantages, different unique elements of, benefits of traveling at any time during the summer season. Lots of good things to offer all throughout. And again, we've got daily train service during this time. So lots of flexibility in travel or planning your travel with the Alaska Railroad. And next slide. So I won't get into too much detail with, fine print and package itineraries today. But as I've been mentioning, we've got daily train service serving all these destinations. One common question that I get about the Alaska Railroad that I'd be remiss not to mention up front, in talking through all of the onboard amenities, you'll notice I did not mention anything about sleeper cars. So we do travel during the daytime exclusively. But we do partner with hotels and lodges in every destination we serve, as well as dozens of different local tour operators. And we do that as a convenience to our guests and as a way to help sort of, make sure that we're supporting local economies in the destinations we serve, by helping to connect our travelers with the services that they need in places like Denali, Talkeetna, Seward, and more. So you'll see on our website and in our summer brochure that we've got a whole variety of different travel itineraries in there, ranging from overnight getaways and day trips all the way up to week-long or 12-day package tours. So these would include your rail travel in between destinations, your overnight accommodations at hotels or lodges, and your choice of, again, dozens of different tour excursions, whether that's a glacier cruise in Kenai Fjords National Park, or flight seeing Denali in the Alaska Range, a wildlife viewing tour, some sort of culinary experience. We've got a whole range of different options for you to add to your tours. One thing that I'll note is all of our itineraries are completely customizable. So we know it can be a little overwhelming to start completely from scratch with that rail belt map of Alaska and build your own just from scratch there. But I'd encourage you, if you're looking through our brochure or looking through our packages online, to just bear in mind that if you see one that looks perfect, you can certainly call us up and book it, or you can use it as sort of a starting point. And if you decide that you want to add an extra night in a given destination or switch up the included tours, that's certainly something that you can do. We can customize those itineraries to your interests, budget, what you want to fit in. All right, so with that, I'll get into a bit of an overview of our 3 daily summer train routes. And the first train that I'll talk about is the Coastal Classic train. So this train departs daily from Anchorage every summer morning, early in the morning. It's our earliest departure from the downtown Anchorage depot. So at 6:45 a.m., it'll start the journey south along Turnagain Arm. It'll make a brief stop in Girdwood, and it'll continue on to Seward, the southernmost stop on our rail line. This is a daily round trip route, so it'll park for the day in Seward, and then at 6 p.m., it'll make the return journey north back to Anchorage. And it's a very popular trip along the way. If we go to the next slide. This is one of 2 routes that includes the option for Gold Star service. So you can see, the opportunity to enjoy that outdoor platform in Gold Star service. I think it's well worth it on this route. Next slide. So the Coastal Classic has the reputation among many as being the most scenic stretch of train tracks along our whole 500-mile route. And part of that is the glacier views that you get along the way. So this is an example of seeing how close the train gets to curving just past Bartlett Glacier. Although this route offers incredible views of Spencer Glacier, Trail Glacier, as well as Kenai Lake, mountain waterfalls, the Placer River Valley. It's absolutely blow away scenery along the way. And then next slide. Once you get to Seward, the views certainly don't disappoint there. Seward is a very pretty little port town located right on the edge of Resurrection Bay. And it's just a short day cruise away from the Tidewater Glaciers and marine wildlife of Kenai Fjords National Park. So we highly recommend this as a day trip. Going out for a small boat day cruise to the fjords is going to be your best bet for getting those glacier views. You've got the chance to see humpback, gray whales, and orcas, as well as otters, sea lions, puffin colonies, all kinds of marine wildlife. So very, very popular option as well. Seward is also home to the excellent Alaska Sea Life Center, as well as some other tour options. So well worth a day trip to Seward or even an overnight. But the Coastal Classic train is generally the first to sell out during the summer. I think because both the views on the way down there, as well as the options of ways to experience Seward and Kenai Fjords are so very popular. On to our next route is the Denali Star train. So we tend to think of the Denali Star as our sort of flagship train. So there are actually two Denali Star trains, two sister trains each day, one northbound and one southbound. And these trains travel between Anchorage and Fairbanks. Now, one way, that's a 12-hour journey. So it'll just be one northbound and one southbound along the way. And in between that 12-hour journey, they'll make a few stops along the way. And the first popular travel destination that we'll hit north of Anchorage is next slide. The small town of Talkeetna. Now, if anyone recalls the TV show Northern Exposure, Talkeetna's claim to fame is that it actually served as the inspiration for Sicily, Alaska. So, if that gives you a sense of sort of the quirky mountain character of Talkeetna, it's got some great Alaska history there, both Alaska Native history, sort of gold rush pioneering history, as well as mountaineering and aviation history. So lots of sort of unique cultural things to learn in Talkeetna. It's also located at the confluence of several rivers. And as you can see, just peeking over the top of the Talkeetna Alaska Lodge in that picture there, on a clear day, you get an absolutely jaw-dropping view of Denali and the Alaska Range. One of the most popular day trips to do in Talkeetna is do a flight seeing tour up around Denali and the Alaska Range. And, one option there, as you can see in the photo, is, taking a plane with skis and being able to actually land on a glacier on the side of Denali, which gives you the option for a snowball fight in June, if that's on your bucket list. But certainly a memorable day trip when you're up there flying around the mountains at that height, over 20,000 feet at the peak of Denali. It feels like you're in another world. It's an absolute blow away. Next slide. This is another very popular day trip in Talkeetna. It's a jet boat tour that'll take you out on the Susitna rivers. But again, you can see that incredible view of Denali rising up over the landscape. A clear day in Talkeetna is definitely a lifetime highlight for the views that you get to see there. Moving north from Talkeetna, speaking of nice views, Hurricane Gulch tends to be a moment when people want to get up out of their seat with a camera on board the train. This is the longest, tallest bridge on the Alaska Railroad system. And that'll be just north of Talkeetna on the way to our next destination, which is Denali National Park. Now, I know for many people, Denali needs no introduction. for many folks who are thinking about a trip to Alaska, Denali is a big part of the reason why. So of course, home to the tallest peak in North America, but also home to incredible wildlife viewing, as well as dozens of different guided tours to get out and experience the park. Whether that's river rafting, hiking, wildlife tours, flight seeing, there's all sorts of ways to get out and have an incredible experience in Denali. Now, you might be aware that the National Park Service does restrict access into the park along the 190-mile road into the park. And perhaps you've heard there are some erosion issues with the road. So I believe it's 2025 until the full road is expected to open again. But currently in the interim, you can get about halfway down the road into the park. Still incredible wildlife viewing opportunities. So still worth a visit. But if the full Denali experience is on your bucket list, something to bear in mind as you're planning to travel the years ahead. Don't want to be surprised by that or not see it coming. And next slide. So we continue north from Denali to the end of the line for the Alaska Railroad on the north end, and that would be Fairbanks. Fairbanks is the largest city in Alaska's interior, and it's also home to the Riverboat Discovery Tour, pictured here, which is a great way for an afternoon tour to get a sense of Fairbanks' history in dog sledding and gold rush history, Alaska Native history. Pack in a number of different, cultural angles of what life is like in Fairbanks and the interior of Alaska. So it's a very popular tour that pairs well with your trip on the Alaska Railroad. Another unique tour opportunity that I'll mention quickly that's a chance to experience in Fairbanks is getting up above the Arctic Circle. Fairbanks itself is not located above the Arctic Circle, but if you're interested in doing a driving tour or a flying tour, there are companies that will get you above there, and you'll have the bragging rights of your certificate saying that you have made it above the Arctic Circle, navigating through the dotted lines of that demarcation on the map. So that's an opportunity from Fairbanks as well. And on to our third and final daily summer train route. From Fairbanks right now, we're jumping south back down to Anchorage for the daily departure of the Glacier Discovery Train. Now, this route is going to cover some of the same tracks as the Coastal Classic train, that first route that I was telling you about, but it'll make some different stops and it'll allow for some different experiences along the way, such as on the first slide here. The Glacier Discovery Train will give guests the opportunity to visit the Alaska Wildlife Conservation Center. This is a unique facility located at the end of Turnagain Arm. So an absolutely beautiful wilderness setting. They've done a really nice job with the animal enclosures here. And, if you're looking for a guaranteed chance to see brown bears, black bears, wood bison, caribou, elk, porcupines, bald eagles. A whole panoply of Alaska wildlife. They've done a wonderful job at this facility, and I guess don't leave disappointed. It's well worth an afternoon trip to see the animals. From the Wildlife Conservation Center, from that stop, the train is actually going to take a hard turn off the main line through a mountain tunnel to come off at the very unique destination of Whittier, Alaska. Whittier is a very tiny town, but it does serve as the gateway for Prince William Sound, which is an absolutely beautiful natural setting. This is another opportunity to pair your train trip with a day cruise out to see tidewater glaciers and wildlife. And one of the most popular day cruises that we partner with in Prince William Sound is called the 26 Glacier Cruise. 3 guesses for why it's so named. There's definitely no shortage of glaciers in Prince William Sound, and you'll come back with incredible photos of glaciers, icebergs, and all the scenery and wildlife around there. On to the next slide, we have even more unique glacier opportunities. So further south from Whittier, back on the main line, heading south from Turnagain Arm, the Seward Highway goes on one side of the mountain pass, but the train tracks go on another. And so there's a section of our tracks that are only accessible by rail. And part of that section is the Spencer Glacier Whistle Stop. Now, this is a remote part of the Chugach National Forest. We've partnered with the Forest Service to be able to let guests off at this remote area in the backcountry, can only get there by train. And the Forest Service has put in about a mile flat packed gravel trail. So you can walk from where the train lets you off out to this incredible glacial overlook. So you can see Spencer Glacier cascades down the mountains. It terminates into Spencer Lake. There's always icebergs breaking off and studding through the lake, which is, pretty neat to see. You can either just get off the train, join a complimentary nature walk with a Forest Service ranger, hike around on your own, or you can take part in a number of guided tours that are offered out at Spencer Glacier. So that'll give you the chance to get out on that lake among those icebergs on a guided rafting or kayaking trip. And, when conditions are right, we have the opportunity to do glacial hiking and trekking on the glacier itself as well. So some pretty unique opportunities to be able to take a train to a remote glacier and back out again and be back in Anchorage in time for a dinner reservation that night. It's a very unique thing that we're able to offer, a very cool partnership with the Chugach National Forest Service. Now, for those who choose to stay on the train as opposed to getting off at Spencer, we have more glaciers. Remember, this train is called the Glacier Discovery Train. So glaciers around every corner. And those who choose to stay on the train will be rewarded with even more glacier views. So here's a shot of Trail Glacier, again, snaking down the mountains. But for those who prefer to just stay on the train, again, this is probably our most scenic stretch of track. So very rewarding experience in that light as well. So that's a quick overview of our 3 daily summer routes. But as I mentioned earlier on, we do operate year-round, and I'll give you a quick overview. During the winter months, we go from daily service down to weekly service. So our Aurora Winter Train operates from mid-September to mid-May. But the standard schedule is north from Anchorage to Fairbanks on Saturday, and then the return trip south on Sunday. Along the way, it'll make stops in Wasilla, Talkeetna, and we do drop people off at Denali National Park in the winter as well. Although I would only recommend this if you're already made plans with an outside tour operator. A lot of Denali is closed in the wintertime, so it's not someplace you want to be hopping off if you don't already have ground transportation arranged there. But we have seen a lot of interest in Talkeetna, overnight weekend trips. The schedule works really well for leaving Anchorage, getting into Talkeetna mid-morning, spending an overnight there, taking the train back south Sunday. Or we do offer fly rail package tours in the winter as well. So taking the train one way between Anchorage and Fairbanks, and then we can arrange a return flight if that's helpful for your travel needs as well. So we do have some options for winter packages also. And in addition, we have seen a lot of growing interest in winter in recent years. And so we're really excited to be offering some increased departures on the winter train in February and especially the month of March. So I believe the whole month of March this year, we've got the regular Saturday, Sunday service, as well as Tuesday, Wednesday departures and Thursday, Friday. So really excited about being able to carry more passengers and offer a little more travel flexibility during those times, which is a really nice time to visit Alaska. The next slide. Part of why I think March is so popular is the days are a little longer, but there's still plenty of darkness for that aurora viewing, which tends to be a big draw for folks coming up in the wintertime. The weather tends to be a little clearer that time of year as well, which, as you can see in the photo there, on a clear day, no matter the time of year, being able to see Denali is always a jaw-dropping event. And what's also nice in March is there's a couple of pretty unique winter festivals that are happening then. So the Iditarod Sled Dog Race, the ceremonial start in Anchorage happens at the beginning of March. The Fur Rendezvous Festival is happening early March. And then in Fairbanks, you've got the World Ice Art Championships. So some very unique, very Alaska events that folks coming up in the springtime have the chance to experience on a winter trip. So yeah, that's a quick overview of the Alaska Railroad. I think we've got some time left for questions, but sure. That's kind of what we're looking at for 2023.
Amazing. Okay, so let's bring it just back to you and me. Not that photo of the Alaska Railroad isn't stunning, but yeah, we do have some questions, and I want to start out with what, if any, you can share about what the Alaska Railroad is doing for the Centennial. I know I got an email from someone in probably your department telling me there's a really cool new package tour, and I'm wondering if you can share a little bit about that and anything else you're able to share at this point.
Sure. Yeah, the Centennial package, we decided to kind of go all out for this one because what we're celebrating in the Centennial is the completion of our main line. And so we wanted to put together an itinerary that would highlight that whole main line experience. So it's a 12-day package. That's the longest package that we have on offer. But it'll take you from Anchorage all the way south to Seward, as well as all the way north to Fairbanks, stopping at all those destinations I was just mentioning along the way in between. So you'll have the chance to do the Glacier cruise in Kenai Fjords National Park, go rafting at Spencer Glacier, visit the Alaska Wildlife Conservation Center, do dryland dog mushing and flight seeing in Talkeetna, of course, spend some time in Denali National Park, and get all the way up to Fairbanks and even above the Arctic Circle. So tried to really go all out for the Centennial.
It's incredible. And so it's 12 days and it's prepackaged. If you are a train person and you want to experience the entirety of the Alaska Railroad, and I've ridden at various times from Fairbanks all the way down to Seward on different parts of the line, this is the tour. And as far as I heard, it's only being offered this year.
That's right. It's a limited edition Centennial special.
I know. I wish I could do it.
Yeah. And also, I'd be remiss not to mention, so the Anchorage Museum is a wonderful facility that, we highly recommend visiting any year, anytime. They've got great Alaska history as well as art exhibits, but we are very excited that summer 2023, they are doing an exhibit all about the Centennial and history of the Alaska Railroad. And so there is time in Anchorage, and a visit to the Anchorage Museum is built into the Centennial package as well. So
amazing. Yeah. Kathy from Visit Anchorage, who we've already done a seminar with. And if you're watching the replay, there will be a little button that appears up in the top part of the screen that will quickly take you over to that video. If you also want to learn about what's new, that was one of the big things that she shouted out for what's new in Anchorage in 23 was that there's this fantastic exhibit that's going to be available just to celebrate the Centennial. So I think everyone's excited that this is kind of a big milestone in Alaska history, and that the train is such an integral part of how many people experience the state, and then we're celebrating the Centennial. So I don't know if you'll know or be able to share, is there going to be anything specifically in Nenana on the anniversary, anything like that you can share?
There is going to be an event on July 15th in Nenana. The tough thing about it is trying to make the train schedule work to get there. I don't know if you've spent a lot of time in Nenana. It's a very small town, but I think that if visitors are going to be in Alaska and have the flexibility to get themselves to Nenana, then we will be having some speeches that day, sort of marking the occasion of this 100-year anniversary of the completion of the Alaska Railroad.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing. I'm really excited to learn more details. Okay, that's enough of my questions. Here's one from Sherry that came in while you were chatting, and I think this is a pretty good one you can handle. She's just curious what time that the Denali Star leaves Anchorage and how long that train ride is to Denali.
Oh, sure. The train departs at 8:15 a.m. From both Anchorage and Fairbanks. Remember, we've got those sister trains, but they both depart at the same time, whether they're going north or south. And if you're taking the train from Anchorage up to Denali, that is just under an 8-hour trip. So it's a fair amount of time on the train, but again, it takes a little while to get in between places in Alaska. So just be prepared for that. Make sure that you're ready to go with your phone all charged up, ready for taking pictures. We welcome people bringing snacks if they feel so inclined, or plan to hit the dining room, the bar, pay attention to the tour guides on board. They've got lots of interesting stories to share. So yeah, it's a decent amount of time on board, but we try to make sure it's a really enjoyable travel time as well.
Yeah, and that one is one that I advise people. I mean, I advise people always to do the Gold Star because the view is fantastic, but that one's an especially great one because you get breakfast and lunch included when you do the Gold Star service going up to Denali. So it's a really nice opportunity to have enough time to see everything if you want to keep your eyes, if you can. I always fall asleep on trains. Maybe people feel the same. Don't fall asleep in Alaska ever. You can only sleep in Alaska when the sun goes down in the summer, and that is the rule, right? And Megan's laughing because there are really long days. You just sleep. Anyway, yeah, Gold Star is fantastic for that one, just because the meals are included, and that makes life so much easier. But speaking of the Denali Star Train, here's another question. This one came from Sharon. So on the Denali Star Train, now let's first say southbound and then answer northbound. Is there one side of the train that's better to try and sit on, or are seats assigned, or how would that work? Or can everybody see because of the windows? I'll let you kind of decide.
Right. There's different advantages at different points during the route. So I'd be hard pressed to say that there's a clear advantage on one side or the other. One nice feature of traveling on the Alaska Railroad, though, is that we do encourage people to, get up and walk around. And we've got some areas kind of for sightseeing, whether you're in adventure class or Gold Star service, that if there is a particular stretch of train where maybe the view is on the other side of the train, well, you can simply stand up. And again, those glass dome windows particularly offer lots of options to see out. Or maybe take a walk back to the open air vestibule. You could certainly stand on either side of the train back there. The cafe car has windows on both sides, huge, up to the ceiling windows. And in adventure class as well, we do offer Vista Dome cars back there. They're a little smaller than the main Gold Star domes. And there's not enough room for all adventure class passengers all at once. We ask that people sort of rotate through, but there's a few different options for making sure that you can see out of either side of the train sort of at any given time. But I'd say as the train is heading north from Anchorage, shortly after leaving the city, the best views are on the right side of the train of the Chugach Mountains as you're crossing the Knik River. As you get further north, the views of Denali will be off the left side of the train, as well as there's great views crossing Hurricane Gulch, off both sides, but people tend to gravitate to the left on that. So, there's good things all throughout. As you get further north up towards Denali, the Nenana River Canyon will be off to the right side of the train. So there really isn't one better side than the other.
That's why you just have to ride northbound and southbound so that you see it all. Okay, so here's another question. This one comes from Shannon, and I know that people have a lot of questions, so I'm glad that this one was asked, is how does transportation work once you get off the train? So let's say one is you've booked a package through the Alaska Railroad. How does that work? And then if you didn't book a package, if you booked your own hotels, how does that work?
Right. That's a good question. This is great. When you live here and work in the industry, you sort of take for granted that people might know these things, being familiar with some of these destinations. But of course, if you haven't been to Alaska before, it's a great question. If you show up on the train, how do you get around once you get to town? Well, the good news is that with the exception of Anchorage or Fairbanks, all the destinations we serve are small enough that you will not have a need for ground transportation once you're there. There's either free shuttles or very pedestrian-friendly small downtown areas to walk around. So Alaska generally is a very train passenger-friendly place to visit. So that will not be something that you need once you're there. I should also caution, for a lot of these small towns, Ubers, Lyfts, taxis aren't necessarily available either. So I wouldn't necessarily assume that that's something that you could find if you're outside of Anchorage or Fairbanks. But again, they're so small, so easily walkable, and frequently with complimentary shuttle service that it's really not an issue. Now, I did mention the caveat for Anchorage and Fairbanks. These are significantly larger cities. If you're only staying for a night or two in the downtown areas, then again, I think you'd be fine without Graham transportation. Both Anchorage and Fairbanks have very walkable downtown areas. And if you're booking sort of guided tour excursions, even if those organizations might be located outside of the downtown core, they'll send shuttles to pick you up. You won't have to worry about transportation. If you were planning on spending longer than a couple nights in those towns, separate from a package tour, then you might want to think about getting a rental car. But that's sort of separate and in addition to doing a train package tour, I would say. But if you're doing one of our itineraries, you would not need to worry about having additional ground transportation.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, so now we have a couple questions that I've received that are more just about maybe like policies of the Alaska Railroad. So these are going to, I think, probably apply no matter which line you're on. The first one comes from Allison. She asks what the options are for people with food allergies or dietary restrictions.
Right. What I always recommend for people who we have a variety of options on board already for vegetarian or vegan or gluten-free, dietary options. That being said, I do always recommend if people have specific allergies or specific restraints, go ahead at your time of booking. Either there's an option if you're booking online to make a note about any special requests, or let the reservations agents know that. We work really closely with our food and beverage on board with, any given day's, group of passengers. If we see a note in there about special dietary needs, then we'll try to stock the kitchens with some more options around those requests. That can't always be a guarantee, but I think that it's a great just sort of tip to know that if you advocate for yourself in advance, let us know that you've got some special requests, then that gives us a chance to do even more than we already have on the menu to try to accommodate.
Perfect. That's great to know. Here's another one. Speaking of accommodations, what tips do you have for ADA passengers or those with limited mobility? Let's say both in the booking process and once they get on the train.
We try to make sure that we've got options for anybody to be able to interact with the Alaska Railroad in, whatever way they need to, regardless of any sort of disability issues. So, we've got different options for calling and booking. If people have issues with hearing, we've got a special line that can work for contacting our reservations agents. Of course, we're also available to, make arrangements via email, if that's easier than being on the phone. And, we've got the website as well for sort of self-service options. As far as traveling on board for people who have mobility issues, again, similar to the dietary restrictions, we can accommodate anyone at any of our stations or depots with any mobility issues, but it's always helpful if we have kind of a heads up to make sure that we've got all the necessary equipment out ready just to be able to, make sure we're getting people taken care of as quickly and smoothly as possible. So, let us know in advance. That way we can definitely be prepared. But all of our rail cars are ADA accessible. Got dedicated areas on board if people have, wheelchairs or any sort of like specialty mobility equipment. I did mention that the Gold Star cars are double decker. For most guests who don't have mobility issues, there's a staircase to let you get up and down, but we do have an elevator on board as well that will accommodate wheelchairs. So I don't want anyone who has mobility issues to think that the Alaska Railroad wouldn't be available for them. We work really hard to be able to accommodate guests of, all sorts of mobility ranges.
Perfect. That's what I like to hear. All right, here's one more question. I want to be respectful of your time and just wrap up with a fun one, hopefully a fun one. Are dogs allowed on the Alaska Railroad?
Dogs are allowed on the Alaska Railroad. So service dogs are allowed, of course, in any car to travel with their guests. For other dogs traveling on board, we do have a kennel policy in our baggage car. But yes, we'll happily get your dogs along for the ride as well, so that you can bring your pet if you're headed out to Spencer Glacier. I know I always enjoy taking my dog out there for an afternoon hike. He loves running around, cooling off in the glacial lake, and then catch the train ride home.
Perfect. That's great. I mean, I was thinking about, of course, travelers visiting and maybe they've come up with their dog in an RV and they want to ride the railroad or something, but it's also the case that locals take the Alaska Railroad, especially if you want to go somewhere like Spencer Glacier. That's the only way to get there. So, of course, there's going to be a policy because lots of Alaskans have dogs and they are part of the family. So they need to come have adventures too.
Absolutely.
Perfect. Okay. Well, thank you again, Meghan, for joining me and sharing all the information about the Alaska Railroad, covering the basics and also giving us a little bit more information about the Centennial. I have a feeling that maybe we'll do like a really short Q&A or something to promote the Centennial. I'm just so excited. I rode. Oh no, it was in 2021. I did a land tour and we stopped in Nenana for a restroom break. And I saw the marker for the Alaska Railroad and saw that it was 2023. And I was like, I got to remember that it's 2023. So I've been very excited on my end to get the emails about it. And I hope this has answered some of the questions that people have while planning their Alaska trips. If you have additional questions, as I mentioned at the top, you can always post them in the comments. The description for this video will be updated after the live stream ends with a bunch more information, including a link to the Alaska Railroad site where you can book. I'll also include the phone number because I am becoming an anti-millennial and I love planning things by phone. I think it's a great way to ensure that what you want to have happen on your Alaska trip actually happens. And as Meghan pointed out, if you have any special needs, special requests, the best way to ensure that those are going to be as accommodated as possible is by phone. Email, things can get lost in the digital world. Unfortunately, it's possible. And the best way is just to call on the phone. So I'll include that information. And then, yes, if you've liked this video, I'd really appreciate it if you actually like it on YouTube. That helps other people find it. And don't forget to tune into the rest of the seminar series. They're all going to be on a playlist on my channel once they've happened, but they're happening all the week that I'm currently speaking. And you can subscribe to my channel for more of the seminar series, more of the Alaska videos, and then a few other videos from here and there in the Alaska West while I travel. Again, Meghan, thank you so much for joining me. And to you watching at home, thanks so much.
All right. Thanks. Hope to see you all on the Alaska Railroad this summer.